What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Scratch Agency podcast, hosted by Scratch Agents for Scratch Agents. This episode is brought to you by On Hand VAs, your go-to for client-facing office-based virtual assistants. Their systemized onboarding process is key to seamlessly integrating VAs into your insurance agency. My name is Stephen Turnbull, founder of T5 Insurance Services in Clinton, New York, and I'm joined by my co-host today, the one and only, you already know, hold your applause, Mr. Sean Fitzgerald, founder of LAF Advisors in Long Island, New York. Ladies and gentlemen, we were able to get him off of his walking tour that he's on the last couple of days and nail him down. So, Mr. Fitzgerald, how are we doing today, sir?
Man, I'm feeling super productive. How about you?
Tell us about
what's going on at 2-5.
Tell us about what's going on there. You and TG doing something crazy.
So yeah, I mean, as most of our listeners would know, being in the insurance industry, you're in front of the computer, I would probably say 12 plus hours a day. Sometimes in a light room or in a dark room, you're in a small space. Well, for me, I'm in a small space anyway. So I'm like, I have to like make it mandatory that I get out once a day and go on, I got my little ruck pack and I go on a 45-minute walk and it gets me outside, gets me some sun. And then I come in and I feel a lot better. So that's no scientific method to the madness. It's just something that makes me feel better.
Maybe it's just the way Instagram's serving it to me. But every time I go on, you got a different story. You walking past some bridge or going through something. I don't know. Maybe it's just keep showing up.
Yeah,
on
I try to get some scenery. Again, I'm in a small office. I gotta change it up sometimes.
Exactly. Well, we're super excited to have our guest on today, and welcome to the show, Mariano Demarin. Did I say it right or did I mess it up?
Good enough, man.
Good enough. That is the president of Homeport Insurance Group. Thank you so much for taking the time. A good friend of the show has introduced us, Ciara, so we know we're in great company, and we're super excited to learn about you and your story. So why don't you just start by introducing yourself to maybe those who are hearing about you for the first time, and then we can jump into the story of Homeport and everything else.
Yeah, man, thanks. And thanks for having me on. Ciara speaks very highly of you guys, so I'm looking forward to the conversation. Quick story short, I was in residential lending for 22 years. I ran the U.S. for a few companies. And sometime early in 2015, I think I might have been in Chicago at the time, and I remember getting on the plane, fly home. I live in South Florida. And I looked at my watch, and it was noon, and it was like 12:02. And it seemed like an hour had gone by, and I'm like, I'm done. So I landed, called my boss. I'm like, hey, man, I know you're not expecting this. I run the U.S. for you. I'm like, but I'm finished. Like, I'm done. I'm not getting on a plane ever again if it's not to go on vacation. I'll stay as long as you need for the transition and all that stuff, of course. I'm not going to burn any bridges. So we did that. And then I was trying to figure out what the hell I was going to do with my life. I didn't have anything set up. I just knew I was done getting on a plane. So I visited with a buddy of mine who had an Allstate agency, large, successful agency. Say, all right, man, maybe I'll go that route. And, quickly realized captive is not what I wanted to do. Here in Florida, and I'm guessing it's most markets, there's those in-between markets with those agencies that'll offer you a contract. You can use their carriers. They get a piece, and it's very restrictive. And also, I felt like I wasn't going to own it myself. So I was like, yeah, after reading a couple contracts, I said no. So then me and a buddy of mine that we've been friends since high school got our licenses. And I just called some friends in the residential lending space and said, hey, man, you know what? You guys know me. I'll take care of your clients. Send me some business. And they did. So for the first 6 months or so, just did homeowners policies and honestly trying to figure out, what? I remember a very funny story. Before I even knew raters existed, I went to go, get pricing. And there was like 15, 16, 17 carriers. And it took me like 6 hours to price out one policy. And I was like, there's no way. I'm like, this is not the way this works. If you're going to be here for 7 hours per client. Anyway, long story short, that was the beginning. And then from there, like I said, I'm sure you guys are going to want to direct the conversation. But initially, it was just me in here with my buddy Will, our licenses, and just getting referrals and starting to figure it out, one at a time.
Can you take us back to those early days? Could you just take us back to like the first day in the office where it's like, hey, I got to figure this out? Because that's so much of our listeners. That's where we're at right now. I mean, Sean just talked about we're in these small offices by ourselves trying to figure it out. We've got small teams at this point or virtual teams or whatever. Sure. But, take us back to those early days and what it was like maybe that first day where it's like, okay, this is on me to go.
So interestingly enough, I'm still not to this day, but in my career, I've never been an in the weeds you know what, operator. That's not my MO. My MO is more of, all right, I want to accomplish this on a grander scale, and you know, I'm going to do it, right? And then figure it out as I go. So specifically to those first few months, um, the biggest challenge for me was product knowledge, was understanding, you know, the various carriers, was understanding their appetites, and just as importantly was getting appointments. You know, I remember, and this is also very specific to me, where when I'm like, all right, I'm doing this, I'm gonna get my license and let's see what happens. And there were some really kind agents that were very forthright and open with me about, hey, come in, I'll show you, I'll give you, I'll answer your questions. And I did that, and I took advantage of that. And everyone would say, oh, you're not going to get appointments. You've got no experience. There's no one's going to give you an appointment. And I love it when people tell me I can't do something. There's few things that piss me off, and at the same time fire me up as much as, hey, you can't do that. I was like, okay, note to self, we'll see about that. So
love that.
Would restart reaching out to carriers, you know, and that was the first big milestone. And I think the first big milestone for everybody is, who do you have? You know, what solutions can you present to your clients? How many bullets can you get in that gun? That way, every time you talk to someone, God willing, you got as many as possible. And the pre-work to that, and this will be now where my advice would come in, and what worked for me is, why should they appoint you? You know, what everyone's serving hamburgers. Why is your hamburger different? What is it about you and your operation that when that rep comes in, or when you meet them at a trade show, or when you meet them at an event, and you should be getting out there, you know, in my case, you know, it's the Latin American Association of Independent Agents is what I was a member of, eventually became the president of, and I'm still very involved with. But where are you going to make those relationships? Because ultimately, and once again, I don't think I'm going to let the cat out of the bag with anything, quite frankly, but it's a relationship business. So if I meet Sean and he's the rep for XYZ company at one of these events, and I kind of just hit it off, I'm not going to hit him immediately. Hey, you got to appoint me. Let's go. You know, develop a relationship slowly but surely. And I meet him a second time. And then by the third time, and this is where that pre-work comes in, my story's ready. My office is tight. My plan's in place. I got a business plan that I could share with everyone that walks in here day one. You know, you walk into my office, all right, here's what it looks like now. Here's my marketing plan. Here are the territories. Here's how I'm getting leads. Here's where I'm getting leads. Here's how I'm going to place business. Here's what my first year looks like. Here's what my third year looks like. Here's what my fifth year looks like. And here's how you, carrier, fit into that business plan, and how I, agent, am going to benefit you as a partner. When you do that, and when you're prepared like that, and when you have a plan, and they come in and the music's on and you're dancing and your dance is a good dance, you're going to get appointments more often than not. And in Florida, our market is really insane to where it's challenging, especially today, more so than when I started in 2015, to get appointments. But it's the same process. It's the same exact process. So I would say, you know, a really long answer to a short question, Stephen. Day one, my biggest thing was, okay, appointments. You know, because the other stuff, you know, business building and creating a culture and interviewing and how to hire, which of course we can touch upon. You know, by the grace of God, I had a ton of experience that just because of my previous life, you know, having moved up the chain twice and went from running, you know, an office to the country 2 times, been there, done that. So to me, it was all right in this industry specifically, number one. And the reason that's number one, it's because of 1A, which is the most important thing is your client. You know, and if that's not the perspective that you have, you know, it's going to be a longer road up the mountain, man. You know, if you take care of every single client, like it's your mother, brother, sister, cousin, uncle, whoever the hell you care about, ultimately they're going to come back. They're going to stay. They're going to refer people. They're going to be happy. They're going to talk wonders about you. But I can't help you if I don't have carriers. I can't help you if I don't have solutions. I can do my best. I can try, you know, and when people, oh, I'm trying, as opposed to what? Of course you're trying. Everyone tries. I'm doing my best. Yeah, no kidding, you're doing your best. Once again, as opposed to what? Not doing your best. Everyone should be doing their best. Yeah. So to me, in the beginning, carrier appointments and doing the prep work to where when the music was on, it's like my dance was tight. And my, you know, once again, by the grace of God, my success ratio was like, you know, 99.99 when they would come in. I was getting those appointments, and I was getting them, and then I was treating them like gold, and I was making sure that I was a great partner to them, and I was writing good business. I wasn't just throwing stuff on the wall because I wanted, you know, to make $1. No, I was writing solid business that performed. Nice. I was taking care of my clients. And then that
Yep.
snowballs because then you build a reputation.
Yeah, that's smart. Mariano, did you look into any networks or clusters or aggregators, anything like that?
I did. Further down the line, not initially.
Okay.
So and we can jump back and forth. Probably about 4.5 years in. One of those clusters. I guess they heard about me through the association. They came and they approached me and they're like, hey, and they presented what they presented, and I didn't see enough in my case, and I'm sure this is a very individual, decision. In my case, I didn't see the sincere benefit of being a part of that at that time, because I had the carriers I needed, because I had the solutions I needed. There was no upside.
Gotcha. Okay. And then from an appointment standpoint, just because I think this is good to touch on,
Yeah, man.
were you strategic about, only because I think back to when I first started going after the carrier appointments, did you go after the carriers that you knew were competitive in your area, or that you wanted, that you were doing well in a specific niche and you knew this one carrier was good at? Like, what was kind of your plan around that?
Yeah, no, I did have a plan, and it was a measured approach where the best way that I can describe it is from their ease of, there in the camera, ease of accepting new agents to the carriers that are just like, man,
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
so day one, I like this one over here didn't exist to me. Like I
I
didn't
gotcha.
remotely consider approaching them until I knew, I waited about a year until I had a business built, I had a client base built, I had a relationship built, I had a track record with these other carriers. Then I went to that next group, and then I
Gotcha.
developed those, and then I went to the next group to where at the end, by the time you go to those really, really tough ones,
Yep.
your story is so compelling, and you've got the data to back it up that of course
Yep.
they're going to say yes to you.
Okay. Awesome. So you get your appointments, you start writing some business. Now, what is the team look like? How did you
Yeah,
how'd you grow that out?
That's also a funny part of the story. So initially, I hired 6 to 7 just old school insurance. Like, man, they've been doing it since it's been done, because there was knowledge gap, right? There's stuff that I didn't know. Once again, if I'm going to take care of a client, I don't know. I'm not taking care of the client, so I just hired like 7 or 8 people. I was like, yeah, they know everything that I don't. But Christ, culturally, it was just not a fit, man. You know what? When it comes to employees, and we can touch upon that, and hiring, and whatever you guys think is important, I got a simple rule. You know what? If you're not happy, you're probably not going to be productive. And if you're not happy and not productive, I know the client's getting a crappy experience. So me and you can't work together. If you are happy, generally speaking, because everyone's got a bad day, but if you're a happy person, you know what? Typically speaking, you got a chance of being productive. And if you're happy and productive, you know what? That client, they're going to get a great experience. So my rules are simple. I don't have a lot of them. And that first year, I think they lasted 90 days with me. It was just like, no, go, you got it. Always with a hug and a handshake, and kind of, hey, I'm going to set you free to go find your place. This is not it for you. And then started hiring. And since that point, everyone I've hired has stuck. You know what? So, my besides Will, obviously, as I mentioned, I'm 53, and we know each other since we were 14 years old. So he's been here since the beginning. My wife, of course, has been here since the beginning. Hired our first agent. He's going on his 7th year. I think 4 months after that, we hired Tyler. So Juan was the first one, then Tyler. He's still here. Then 3 months after that, Ioannis, he's still here. Then it was like a year after that, and this is now as you grow and you keep bringing people on, so it makes sense economically. We hired Kevin. He's going on his 3rd year. We recently hired Veronica. She's about to hit her 1st year. George, we just hired, is on his 90th day. And then our service team, which is my wife, and I have service and sales separated in the office as much as possible. I bring a lot of my mortgage and residential lending sensibilities into this space because I think it works. I'm also a believer in happy people, right? So what do happy people do? What they like to do. If you playing basketball and I make you eat, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches all day, and I don't let you touch a basketball, you're not going to be happy. So service people, they don't want to call clients. They don't want to sell. They don't want to do that whole thing. Sales people, they don't want to cross T's and dot I's. That's not their
So
gig.
true. Yep.
So put them where they're happy. So anyway, my wife's been here since the beginning. Then we had another service girl who'd been here since the beginning, and 5 years in, moved back to Argentina because her mom was sick. So we rehired someone, and now she's going on her 1 year here. So since that time, been very fortunate in the culture that we create, in our interviewing process where it's not me. I get the entire team involved in the interview, and I ensure that the candidates really understand that they need to be interviewing us as much as we're interviewing them. In that way, if everyone's like, hey, man, shit, this could work out, at least the odds are in our favor that it will work out. Sometimes it doesn't, but more often than not, it does.
That's
So
very cool.
Old school group, all out. New school group, still here.
Is there anybody from that first set of hires that's still there, or were they all?
Oh, hell no, man.
Yeah.
Like I said, 90 days, and I was just like, no, you guys are you're I can a really challenging group of people that were just bringing me down. Like I can't be around you.
Can we dive a little bit further into the experience? One of the things we talk a lot about on this podcast, especially with scratch agents, is like there's things like that you're only going to learn if you do it and make the mistake. And through the experience of doing that. So what are some things from a leadership standpoint now, coming on, so it's 9 years old, the agency.
Yeah.
So coming up to about 10 years here, like what are some things that you've learned leadership wise when running an agency that'd be good for a scratch agent that's looking to hire their first person, or maybe looking to bring on their first salesperson or something like that? Let's dive a little deeper into that if we can.
Absolutely. I think that the first step is for that agent, owner, scratch agent, kind of day one, really have a conversation with yourself. That's the first step. It is, what are your needs and what's going to make you happy in this hire? Because once again, if you can't be completely honest, specific, and you know what you're looking for, then there's your answer. You don't even know what you're looking for. So, you might as well roll the dice, and that's not what this is about. You're about to make a very important investment in an individual with money that comes out of your bottom line. So it's like, it's like going to Vegas. Just try to get the odds in your favor, man. So that's number one. What do you want? What do you need? What's going to make you happy? You got the answer to those three questions? Great. Second step is, all right, what characteristics in a person is going to meet these three things? Do they need, in my case, competitive. I like competitive people. Number two, as I mentioned, I like happy, because motivated. Oh, I want someone motivated. I can motivate everybody. You can't motivate anyone, man. People are motivated or not. You can demotivate them by creating a terrible environment that they hate showing up to, of course. Or you can create a motivating environment that they appreciate and they feel. But at the end of the day, they wake up in the morning and they choose their life. So, happy, yes. I want happy. I like competitive, and people that care. That's it. And I everything I try to do, Stephen, is through so many mistakes and trials and errors, especially in my first career, is keeping things simple.
I was just going to say that. So simple.
Yeah. Fewest things you have to worry about, the easier your life becomes, the happier you are. Once again, the happier you are, the more successful you'll be. There's a book that recently, and I wish I could remember the title, especially on a podcast. I would love to hand it out. But the essence of the book is, people think that, I'm going to be successful and then I'll be happy. And I don't subscribe to. I know so many miserable SOBs that are rich and successful, and they're miserable. They're not happy people.
You're not referring to the energy bus, are you?
I don't remember, to be honest with you. I literally just.
I was gonna get fired up if that was what. I love that.
So you gotta be happy.
Same type of story.
So know what you want, then what characteristics does that person need to have, and then interview for those characteristics. Kind of upside down triangle at the top, general questions. So, what, Sean, are you competitive? Oh, it sounds like I'm the most competitive person on the planet. There's no one more competitive than me.
Right.
Great. When's the last time you won something? I have no idea. Well, then you're not competitive, dude, because you would know when you won or lost something. So then you kind of get down to the specifics. And if it's like check, great. You know what? This person meets exactly what I'm looking for. I describe to them what I'm looking for. I explain to them what I'm looking for. They meet it, and then you roll. And then you go from there. But at least the initial steps, I think, all start with yourself.
Yeah.
You need to understand what, why, when, and where, and then characteristics that will get you what, why, when, and where, and then you interview for those characteristics.
So smart. That's so smart. I love how you broke it down into the three categories. I think back to my producer, and he super competitive, has a hockey background. He played hockey, to the collegiate level basically, and we're always like, man, like our thing is like we just want to win, we love winning. So he's so I love that you said that, but I think just I'm going to keep those three things in my mind moving forward when it comes to hiring. Do they care? Are they happy? And are they competitive?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a
To
game
me, it
changer.
works. To me,
Yeah.
that makes things
Yeah.
easy.
And Stephen, you go.
Yeah, so talk to us about the evolution of the agency past the team and all of that. You said you started with homeowners. What I love, I had 6.5 years experience in the industry before I went on my own, and I still feel like I have no idea what I'm doing some days. But so I love talking to people that had no experience and dive into it. And you talked about the product knowledge as a weakness in the beginning, but talk to us of the evolution of where you're at today. You started with homeowners and how that shifted, and maybe
Yeah, absolutely.
lessons during that evolution that you learned that maybe you wish you knew sooner.
Without a doubt, I would say there's three things, which is what we're evolving to today, and an interesting cultural shift that we're working on. So, one is by once again by the grace of God and the reputation that I had and that eventually my team built. We were getting so many damn referrals. Never spent a dollar on marketing, so we were getting so many damn referrals that our business was so unbelievably monoline, which of course in this industry is not, it's not ideal because the chances, we all know, likelihood of them sticking, blah, blah, blah. So we had an insane amount of monoline business, but everyone's cranking out, 60, 70, new policies a month per person. It was hard keeping up. So in hindsight, first thing I'd mention is um, make it more of a concerted effort to where every initial conversation is a thorough review of your insurance needs. And that way, from get go, I can get 3 policies out of you, not just one. From get go, I have visibility into all and everything, that you represent and your risks, and I can insure it properly. And that way, the account, it'll stick longer. There's more revenue attached to it. And quite frankly, it's easier to sell 3 policies to one person than to sell, 3 policies to 3 people, right? So number one would be that we
Well,
did
just to stop there for a
yeah,
second, not to cut you off. How does your team have those conversations? Because
today.
we talk, yeah, because we talk a lot with scratch agents and like write the good business, have the agency standards from the beginning, like but and talk to still people that you got to get the revenue in the door when you're starting, and you may still write just those monoline homes, but like, how does your team have those conversations with the clients? Like, are you guys just writing now packages only? What does that kind of
Yeah.
evolved into? Sorry to cut you
Sure.
off. I'm just
So
Great
curious.
no,
question.
please, man, and I would prefer you do that because if not, I don't set up. I'll tell you, yeah, it's a weakness. So today we due to our reputation that we've built, we've also interestingly, and it's a great case study, we've evolved from hunters to gatherers. So we our sales culture is a culture of gatherers at this point. We're just waiting for that lead to come in, and that's not a healthy culture. There's got to be a balance. So now circling back to what you're saying is every single conversation, we put it into what we call, the manufacturing funnel, which is number one, get 2 or 3 yeses out of them. You're hey, is this your address? Is this what you're looking for? Whatever it is. And then ask them a question that's going to get them talking, right? If it's about the house, hey, how many years have you been at this house? Do you enjoy the neighborhood? Do you enjoy your job? Do you enjoy your business? Whatever the hell it is. And then they're going to share something, you share something. So that part we just call it the conversational piece, making you're not interrogating them to where it's not just trying to get to the kill. No, man, have a conversation, build a relationship. Third part is solve whatever it is you're talking about. If it's they're calling in to make a payment, if it's a new binding, if it's an endorsement, whatever it is that's going on, resolve that. And then it's the transition. And that's kind of what you're asking about, which is, hey, in order for me to have visibility into your entire risk portfolio, I need you to send me over all your policies. If you have an auto, send it over with me. If you have an umbrella, send it to me. If you have a business, send it to me. Whatever it is, because I'm going to do a thorough review of where you are at the moment. And more often than not, they will, because you're not selling them anything and you're offering them a service. So now that you're getting these policies, call them back. And then that second conversation is what leads to the sale, which is, hey, Steven, I noticed that on your homeowner's policy, you chose, a limit of $10,000 on your water. How come? And of course, I'm sure you're not going to be shocked by this. 99% of them are like, oh, like I chose that. I didn't choose that shit. Someone chose it for me.
Right.
So bottom line is, at that point, is you can really show your worth and your expertise and that you care, which, gets back to my 3 core things. You care. I'm caring about you. I'm showing you, hey, man, this isn't good for you. Or you got teenagers driving cars and you have an umbrella. Let me give you some examples of why, hey, man, that's probably not a good idea. So once we have their breadth of policies in, we do the review, We call them back, and at that same time, if there's a plausible solution available, we present it. Okay, this is better, this is better, this is better. And if there's not, AOR. That's fine, no problem.
Yep.
Here's what we're going to do, because I do need to have this visibility. I'm going to send you something. We'll explain when you need to explain to you guys what an AOR is. Boom. God willing, they do the AOR, and now, at some point, you got a new policy anyway. And now you've got their entire portfolio with you, which gives you that control, gives you greater revenue per account, greater visibility with the client, and of course, the stickiness, as you guys know, goes up exponentially.
I just love the fact of how you described that. So everyone rewind that and listen to that again, because I love the fact of what you were just saying about how now you're immediately providing a service. You're not selling something.
Yeah.
You're immediately giving them that experience that they probably have not experienced yet right off the bat. We just want to review it for you and let you know, and then pointing out those weaknesses, right? And I mean that's what makes the difference with those conversations.
And I feel like too, sometimes we overcomplicate stuff, right? Like Mariano, you discussed this before, like keeping it simple, right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes, man, just ask. Just if you're like, so Stephen, this happens with us a lot because I know you do a lot of new, home purchases and whatnot. And I have some referral partners that are mortgage lenders, and like you just have to remember to ask, who is your auto insurance currently with, and then explain to them why it's important to have it all with one agency from a client satisfaction standpoint, from a claims experience standpoint, from a pricing standpoint. So, to keep it simple, just ask.
Yeah.
Even more so on the one that we're once again sharpening our knives on. When you mentioned ask, Sean, it reminds me of is at the end of the phone call, when you're done with all that, you always ask for a referral. And I can tell you it happens like 0. Where it's simply it's like, hey, Steven, you know what? This is how I make my living. This is how I grow my business, is through word of mouth. And I'd ask you for a small favor. I'd appreciate it if you kind of put the word out if you ever, someone ever needs something. You're asking for a favor. You're asking, from a place of kindness, and you provided a service. What are they going to say? No? They'll be like, all right, great, no problem. And some will refer, some won't. But at least it's the habit. It's the habit. It's the consistency that gets you those referrals.
I have to do a better job. I'm terrible at that. I am so terrible at that. But we at one of our networking groups a while back, we had an employee from Tony Robbins' company come to one of our meetings and give like a presentation. And at the end of the presentation, he gave us all a piece of paper, and it had, I think it was either 1 through 5 or 1 through 10 on it. And he goes, if you guys don't mind, like they got us all riled up at the end, and they're like, all right, guys, now if you can, just before I leave, please write down, 5 people that you think would absolutely love and benefit this program. And he turned around and he started, cleaning everything up so we wouldn't look at him. But he probably got a bunch of referrals from that, and all he did was ask, So I got to do a better job at that.
Sean, Sean, I'm the same way, but I want to put you in the hot seat for a minute. Why do you think you need to do a better job at that? And I'm curious of everybody's thoughts.
Do it.
Right. But I mean, and I'm just I'm curious as you're thinking of it, like, why don't we, as agents do better in that area?
Yeah. For me specifically, I sometimes get caught up in we're already asking for so much. That's how I feel sometimes, which is not the right way to feel.
I agree with you.
I'm doing them a service, and I'm being a guide for them. So I should want to ask at the end. But sometimes I feel like, hey, I know I just wrote your business policy, the workers' comp and the employee benefits and the cyber and the flood. Oh, and we can look at your personal lines, and we can, you know what I mean? Sometimes I think every conversation's a little bit different, but I think you need to know where to plug that in and where that line is that you don't cross, where you're not being too pushy,
Well, and I think you have to just, like Mariano said, explain why you're doing it too.
Yeah.
Right. And I just actually got reminded of this last week. I had a guy that I know from the country club I'm a member at, got a new house. Someone told him, hey, don't forget Steven does insurance. You got to call Steven. We had a conversation. He goes, yeah, when I get to that point in the closing process, I'll let you know. Long story short, he went to Progressive Direct. Progressive Direct comes out. There's a tree branch hanging over the garage. They go to cancel the policy. Now he wants Steven's help, right? So I look at it, bare bones, $500,000 house, beautiful house, the bare bones coverage. And my proposal was $958 more. And I sold them on one video proposal, because I told myself before I even recorded the video proposal, have the honest conversation. tell him, this is the coverage I'm telling you that
Yep.
we need to have, and here's why. Compared to what you have now, you're missing X, Y, and Z, and this is why it's a weakness and an exposure to you. And he replied back in one email, thank you very much, all looks good, great points, let's move forward, for a $958 difference. Instead of saying in my mind, oh man, this is gonna be $958. Why am I even just don't even
Yeah.
record the video? Just send it
Yeah.
over, because he's probably not gonna want it. I said we have to provide the value here, and like I need to find a way to remind myself each and every time of that, because there's a perfect example. Did the video proposal, he replied back, got the apps done, good to go. He's got much better coverage. I saw I'll shut up because this is a funny story. I saw him at the local hockey game that night. And I walk in the bar area in the arena, and from across the bar, he yells, T5, there's my insurance agent, that night. And so like, that's the thing. It's like, he obviously saw the value, right? And so
Did you ask him for a referral?
well, we had like, I bought him and 3 of his buddies drinks that night. So hopefully, hopefully one of the 3 of them will return the favor, you know?
Yeah, that's one way to do it.
Yeah, but I mean that story, I think, makes complete sense what we're talking about. Just ask and have the honest conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
Man, it's good stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, Mariano, is there anything that when you were outside of the insurance industry and now coming in, that you maybe thought would be more challenging than it is now today? Anything coming in completely blind?
Not really, man. You know, this industry is very similar to what my experience was. It's just upside down, where in lending you do all the underwriting and you do all the processing and you do and then you close. Here you kind of do some at the end, and then you bind, and then the underwriter at the end. So it's kind of the inverse. That took a minute, but not really, because it's a people business, you know, Stephen. And at the end of the day, I you know what I tell anyone that's willing to listen is, you know, if you care about people and you treat them right, your employees, your customers, your vendors, you know, things take care of themselves, man. And it doesn't mean that there's not going to be, you know, times where you get burned or you run into someone who's not a good person or doesn't do right, if you will. That's their loss. You know, they just lost me as a relationship. They lost me as a contact. They lost me as an asset. So I don't sweat that stuff. I focus on, you know, good people, good processes, making sure that, you know, kindness and caring are a piece of what we do. And that's what led us, you know, today, it's been 2 years since we joined a national brokerage, because I wanted to expand into other states. You know, I wanted to get more access. And you asked about this kind of, you know, where have we transitioned? So we are deeper in commercial lines, you know what? And so just as a result of growing up down here, you know, we grew up on Miami Beach and we knew a lot of people, you know, and so a bunch of stuff just came in. It was just random commercial business. So, you know, 10% of our book was commercial. And today, we are working, instead of being 30 feet wide, just try to get 30 feet deep, you know, to find a couple expertises. And that's another thing that, in hindsight, if I were to give myself advice 9 years ago, and anyone that's listening to advice, if you are going to get into commercial, it's nice, it's great to be a generalist. I think there's a space for generalists, but if you want to kill it, you need to be, you know, 50 feet deep. We ran into a guy that does pawn shops. You know, I was like, and he runs the pawn shop business, and he's got like 80 pawn shops, and he's got an amazing, like ridiculously stupid successful business doing pawn shops. And he's the pawn shop guy, and he can't break in because he's got the relationship, of course, with all the pawn shop carriers.
Sure.
And he runs the show. So that would be something that I think for anyone, you know, starting out or in the early stages is, if you are going to get into commercial and you want to take commercial really seriously, I think being a generalist is nice. And I think you do provide a lot of service and a lot of options. But being a specialist at 30, 40 feet deep in something, which is what we're working on in the hospitality space for us, restaurants, bars, nightclubs, where we know people, makes a difference. Because 1, you corner the market. 2, you corner the carriers. 3, the customers. Man.
So what brought you to the hospitality? I'm just curious, when you were making this pivot and thinking of where you were going to go, when you found out pawn shops was already taken and you had to go back to the drawing table. How did you think about that and brainstorm around that?
I mean, we grew up on Miami Beach, and late 80s, early 90s when South Beach was what it was back then, and when it was the greatest time of South Beach. So we just know a bunch of people that own bars and restaurants down there that we grew up with, and and it was an easy thing where
Sure.
it's like, all right, man, send me your stuff, send me your stuff. Can you introduce me to someone? Send me your stuff, and before you know it, and especially now over the past decade, where South Florida, and especially post-COVID, where so many people have moved down here and so much money has moved down here. The level and the amount of bars and restaurants and nightclubs and taverns and high end stuff just keep growing in that space. So we know people just from our childhood, and we've trying to develop
Great
that
space.
and get even deeper.
Love that space. Mariano, talk to me about the relationships. You mentioned a couple of times that, relationships in this industry are the most important thing.
Yeah.
What are some of the ways, and I know you've been in the industry, you have the mortgage background, it sounds like you have a lot of relationships. For producers coming into your office, what are some ways that you have them build new relationships?
So in my case specifically, and then I'll give a general answer. In my case specifically, is I will set them up with one of my referrals, one of my sources, and I will train them to make sure that they understand that you only make one first impression. And by that, easiest way to make an impression is, you get an email. Hey man, can you quote this out? Within a minute, there needs to be a reply to that email. Email received. I'm on it. Thank you. Boom. Done. Number one. Once referrals and agents become comfortable, I guess just like most relationships, that level of like, I am on it dissipates. Not with my team. My team is, hey man, you get an answer, you let them know you received it. Number one. Number two is, especially initially, finish whatever you're working on, because I'm also, finish whatever, the analogy I give my team is, if you have a house and each room is something you're working on, like, a customer call, a payment, an underwriting, blah, 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 and you go and you turn on the lights in every room, you're burning a bunch of electricity, nothing's getting done. So walk into the room, turn on the light, finish the task, close the room, come out, go to the next one. So finish whatever you're doing and then immediately get that quote out. So now that brand new, fresh referral, and this is as they get their own in time, which of course they do, they get that quote within the hour immediately. So now they got an answer instantaneously. They got a quote within the hour. They're not getting that. I know they're not getting that normally. I know that they're not getting that level. And they'll call us because we hear this. She'll be like, oh my God, my current agent, it usually takes them 48 hours to get me a quote back. And we're like, oh yeah, no kidding. Of course. Thank you. Good information now. So those are the initial first two things and it's under the greater category of how do you differentiate yourself? We all, I get that. We all sell cheeseburgers, man. Everyone sells cheeseburgers. A cheeseburger is a cheeseburger is a cheeseburger. Homeowner's policy with this company, there are 3,000 other agents that can provide it. What's going to make us different? So number one is that responsiveness. And then after, which is the second part, and they will get this feedback, is making sure that client gets, the greatest of care possible. Because at the end of the day, this isn't my client. Steven sent me that client. And if I screw this up, I'm screwing Steven up. That's it. That referral source is done. So I treat that client unbelievably well. And I go through everything step by step. And I make sure that they feel like, man, this has been an amazing process for me. So now the referring source gets immediate stuff because I'm holding up their paycheck. I'm holding up their livelihood. I'm holding up their process. Not anymore. Of course I'm not. With me, they get it immediately. The client gets stupendous caring service. Referral source is yours. You don't need to ask John, hey man, if you got another one, send it my way. John's just like, oh shit. Like, is that the way this is gonna go? Let me try this again. Because at first, as you all know, typically when you try to source a new referral, they're gonna send you, it's an igloo and it's melting in 3 weeks, get me a policy. And you're like, whoa, like that's a tough one. You gotta dance. You gotta figure out still the same process. So the process doesn't change. That manufacturing mentality doesn't change. Immediate answer. Get your quote immediately. Treat the client like gold, regardless of the situation. And more often than not, the referral source is still. So, circling back to what Steven asked, to say what's the new person doing? Like I said, in my case, I hand them stuff and then eventually they develop their own. If that is not the case, what I teach them is number one, draw a circle. And who is everyone in that circle that you have contact with at least once a week, or monthly, great, a bunch of people, wonderful. how many of them are homeowners in our case? Because that's what we specialize in. Well, these 72 of them are homeowners. Great. Call them up and ask them who their loan officer is. My loan officer was Johnny Smith. Great. Thank you. Do you have his number? Yes, I do. Now I called Johnny Smith. Hey, Johnny, I'm really good friends with Sean. He said you did the lending for him. I do insurance now, and I'd love to get to know you, kind of get to know what your needs are, and have a conversation. You're gonna have to have many conversations, and eventually one's gonna stick. And once that one sticks, you kind of go through that whole process. Then it's the next, the bigger circle, which is people now that that I don't talk to as often, but I still have enough comfort where I can reach out to them. And you go through, once again, to manufacturing, same exact process. I call them up, hey man, I heard you did a loan for so and so. I'm in the business. You want to meet for coffee? Whatever it is. And you can slowly, old school, build that way. As a matter of fact, we have a guy here so now the name of the broker that I'm a part of is called the Liberty Company. So another office down the street, guy was doing personal lines, and the market got crazy here. He was doing high net worth personal lines. He's like, I'm done with this. And he transitioned into commercial hotels on the ocean, 250, 350, 450, $500,000 policies. And he's getting them by cold calling, which to me is like, holy shit. And you know why? Because you know how many people are cold calling those places?
Right. Right. Yeah.
There's no one doing it. And he's calling in. He's like, hey, man, can I talk to the man who's in charge? In charge of what? Insurance. Yeah, sure. 1 second. They get him on the phone. He's like, hey, dude, send me your stuff. Let me check it out. And he's landing these $500,000 policies. He's building this monster book. And this is a grown man. It's not like a 20-year-old that's just starting off. And that was another really important lesson. And again, it centered me, and I explained it to my group, is that you can't think you're more important. You can't think you're too much of a big shot, to roll up your sleeves. This dude's cold calling, and he's pressing it. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but that's kind of the thought that comes to mind, man.
Such good stuff. So I love the reminder about the first impression. I tried to be very specific about that too. I got one referral partner that she'll text the agency line with the contact, and say, please reach out to them. We're waiting for your call, and we'll try to get on it right away. And sometimes you get from the client, like, I just got off the phone with so-and-so referral partner. How'd you, but but being able to sit, and to your point, you don't need to stop what you're doing, quote that, get it out that second, but to the customer thinks that's what you're doing. And then trying and making sure you make that part of your process. This has been so fantastic. And this is one of the things that I love about this industry. And publicly, again, thank you to CR for making the introduction, because the three of us, we didn't know each other at all until, well, Sean and I know each other, but we didn't know you until you jumped on, and I learned so much, and I'm super excited to continue to connect even after this episode, and continue to learn more. But one last question I want to ask you that we ask people. Tomorrow morning, you're going to wake up, okay? We're imagining. You're going to wake up tomorrow, and you got to start over from zero. Tomorrow morning, you got to issue policy 1. What's one thing that you could tell yourself right now that you would do differently? The first thing that comes to mind.
First thing that comes to mind is I would start with commercial and not personal lending. Bigger bang for the buck, and it's more in our wheelhouse. The upside is a lot bigger. So the downside, if you lose a $500,000 policy, it really, really hurts. Or if you lose a regular personal line policy, it's not as painful. But I would do it that way because at this point, I'm 10 years later down the road, and I would need to get it built a lot quicker. So that's what I would tell myself.
Well, thank you again very much for joining us. We really appreciate it. There was so much value in here. We appreciate you taking the time. For anybody that heard something and maybe wants to pick your brain, what's a good way to get in touch with you? Can they connect with you on social, or what's the best way to get in touch with you for anybody listening?
Quite frankly, they can email me if they want. So my email address is M as in Mary, D as in David, at home, HOME, port, PORTINS.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Mariano Demarin, and quite frankly, if someone really needs help, they can call me on my cell phone. I don't know if you guys want me to put that or not. I could care less.
It's up to you. Yeah.
Yeah, man. If they need help, 305-992-7239. I'm a big believer in paying it forward. So if I could help someone out, why the hell not?
Appreciate it. Mariano, thanks again for taking the time to join us. Everybody, that's another episode of the Scratch Agency Podcast. Thanks for joining us. Do us a favor, like the show, share the show, and subscribe. Make sure to join our Telegram. Go to scratchagencypodcast.com. Click join the Scratch community. Most importantly, remember to dig down deep, believe in yourself, and own your own future. We'll see you next week. Take care.